on my grandma's patchwork quilt. Squares and corduroy and silk, red and green and blue, and yellow too, on my grandma's patchwork quilt. This is written by a dear friend of mine, long gone now, Larry Penn from Milwaukee. And I was singing it down in Cincinnati one time. And a lady come up to me afterwards. She was 94. Her name was Elizabeth. And she said, "You know, son, that's a fine song, but it's wrong." I said, "How so?" And she said, "Well, a good quilt maker never put corduroy and silk together. They shrink different and pucker up your quilt." I said, "Well, I'm going to stop and see my friend Larry who wrote it." She said, "A man wrote the song?" I said, yes, he did." And she said, "Well, it's typical of men, talking with authority about things they know nothing about." So try it with me. On my grandma's patchwork quilt. On my grandma's patchwork quilt, squares of corduroy and silk, red and green and blue and yellow too, on my grandma's patchwork quilt. I got a patchwork quilt so fine, it was an art of her design. A piece of sister's dress right next to grandpa's vest on that pretty patchwork quilt. On my grandma's patchwork quilt, squares of corduroy and silk, red and green and blue and yellow too, on my grandma's patchwork quilt. I got a pillow for my head, and it wants to be my friend, but nothing keeps me warm in a big snowstorm like my grandma's patchwork quilt. On my grandma's patchwork quilt, squares of corduroy and silk, red and green and blue and yellow too, on my grandma's patchwork quilt. Why, now grandma's gone to rest, oh, that quilt is all that's left, and her love, I swear, it's grown in every square of that pretty patchwork quilt. On my grandma's patchwork quilt, squares of corduroy and silk, red and green and blue and yellow too, on my grandma's patchwork quilt. All around the world people wait for a day when there's no hate, and we treat each one like my grandma done with that pretty patchwork quilt. On my grandma's patchwork quilt, squares of corduroy and silk, red and green and blue and yellow too, on my grandma's patchwork quilt. And her love, now I swear, it's in every square of my grandma's patchwork quilt. Thank you so much.